So last week, I went and saw the movie First Man. It's about Apollo 11 and Neil Armstrong. Many of you have probably seen the movie. The story is well told. The plot is understood, no surprises, and the ending is very clear. As I'm watching the movie, I got actually quite emotional watching the scenes and various parts of it. And I wondered to myself, why is this happening? There's no surprise in this movie for me. And the answer was that when I saw this as a child, when I saw the first man land on the moon and actually walk on TV, I remember how I felt. I knew that there were people that designed this thing to go to the moon and bring him back, and they actually were fantastic engineers and did something really good for humanity no matter what country you were from. And that feeling stayed with me. And that's probably why, in the back of my mind, I decided then that I wanted to become an engineer. And I tell you this because it's the same reason why I joined Samsung. And my job here today is to introduce Samsung B2B to you and tell you a bit about what we are doing and the scale of our operations in the US. The innovation that you saw this morning is very much mirrored in terms of what we are doing into the B2B space in the US. If Samsung B2B as a business unit was an independent company, would be valued somewhere around $30 to $35 billion. So we are a large player in the market in the United States. And we work with a number of large enterprises. In fact, about 2,000 companies focused on different verticals. This does not include the SMB segment. It doesn't include the small businesses that we serve through the carriers. We have a number of different verticals of focus. We have a number of different applications and solutions that we have developed to solve very complex business problems for our enterprise customers. And we address 25% of the Fortune 500 in the US. So our base is quite large. We've been quite active. We partner and we go to market with service providers, with carriers, with a group of very well-established distributors in the marketplace, and with leading industry partners. The reason this is important for our developer community is that if we develop an application and a solution, we have a large go-to-market and channel distribution. We can easily distribute this. So the idea here is that by solving problems for the enterprise, we can make money. All of us can be quite successful. And there's a lot of upside. These are some of the verticals that we focus on: healthcare, manufacturing, retail, public safety, transportation, government, financial services, and SMB, which is a new addition. The opportunity for each of these is quite large in terms of software alone, not including hardware. And the growth rate is significant. In the public safety side, that is a segment that's going through a massive transformation. In fact, this morning, we announced a big deal, a first-of-a-kind application delivered for public safety by Samsung in the market today. The SMB segment on its own is quite large. Services is around $40 billion in the US, and the year-over-year growth is about 20%. So it's a large segment that we are also serving, mainly through the carriers. So our objective is to create a developer ecosystem to target these, because I think this will make all of us quite successful and solve complex business problems, engineering problems. How do we do this? Well, we start with our mobile platform. And we really have, we want to basically wrap around it products, capabilities, and what we call solutions around this mobile platform. Now, let me just remind you, and for all of us in this room that work for Samsung or our partners, that we are the only open business B2B grade platform, mobile platform on the market today. And what we have done is put together an architecture to describe what this all means for our customers and for our developer community and engineers. And this is a simple view of our system architecture of our platform. It begins with what we call a range of our devices that we bring to market. You saw some of the new products on the market this morning. These are the highest quality products, no matter what the price point is. They are in different form factors so that they're flexible in the business environment. Many of the products we have for the B2B market are purpose-built. We're the only company that does that in scale in the market in the US today. And they're optimized for the seamless workspace for the different verticals that I mentioned today. But it's not just the product, but also the capabilities that we have built on top of it. And the way we describe it is as follows. We have certain capabilities that are basically touchable by the end user, like the camera, like the pen. And there are those that are embedded into the system architecture. All of these are available for customization to solve business problems. These capabilities are very important because think of it as a toolbox that developers can use to really rethink and reimagine how work can be done and how we can improve the processes in the business environment. It's really a way of redesigning a workflow or a process or rethinking the engineering design or the industrial design of a workspace. And I think this has a lot of potential for all of us to leverage going forward. We, of course, use Android and then Tizen. We heard about that this morning. The idea is that we can develop software, connect different wearables together, different devices, different elements, and then expand it in the business environment. Now, one thing I'd like to point out, most of the applications and the announcements we made this morning are extremely applicable and very important and critical for the business environment. So that is our Android plus Tizen using SDKs and APIs. Now, I want to discuss security. Security in a B2B environment and for the enterprise is a table stake. It's an absolute must and essential. We work hard to create what we call a defense-grade security for business, which we call Knox. This is a bolt-on management system. Not only controls hardware, but also software. It makes applications easy to use, and it makes the device very manageable. The reason Knox is very important for us is that as we develop applications for a certain industry or for a certain enterprise, the CIO has peace of mind that they can deploy these applications with ease, and they can integrate these into the back end, and they can manage them. Developer communities should know that we can actually expedite the rollout of applications using Knox and using our workspaces. Now, of course, G Suite apps and Microsoft Office apps run seamlessly and are well integrated on top of our devices. But any applications that we develop can be placed on the App Store and Google Play Store, and also on Samsung Certified App Store. The reason this is important is that we will provide a wide distribution channel for any application that we develop for an enterprise. I'll discuss some of these a bit more. Now, all of this, what I mentioned today, is the technology of today. We have it, it's available, we've been using it. But there's one element that's very critical for us and the B2B environment, and that's 5G. This is very exciting because 5G is really a transformational technology. It changes the game altogether. It's not additive. It really has a multiplier effect because any app that is developed for an enterprise should be reimagined once 5G comes into play. So if you want to work with a company that has the chipsets, the network components, and the devices in 5G, that's Samsung. We are first in the market. Now, 5G is a bit on the horizon, but it's approaching fast. What I invite all of us to do is to rethink and imagine how work will be done in different verticals when 5G arrives. And that work of developing applications and developing use cases has already begun. So this is the picture that we present to our CIOs, to the chief security officers, and the engineers within an organization. And we show them how we can develop applications on top of this platform to plug in and how they can plug this platform into the back end. We like to use this as a standard format going forward. What we say to them that we can improve your processes, we can rethink the industrial design of a business, and we can create a seamless workspace, which is the theme of this discussion today. This is our mobile platform. Let me shift. What is a seamless workspace? What does that really mean? Let me show you a video to describe that in a bit more detail. So that's a video. Let me tell you in real life what that really means. That's supposed to be my office. Now you can't see it. It faded in the background. But the first important thing you should notice is this thing called the flip, which is a lifesaver. I can actually display my presentations on here, and it's a very handy blackboard. I can write on it, send files, email, print, save, and collaborate. In fact, I couldn't live without this anymore. It's an incredibly powerful device that we use in our offices today. On the other side, you see a tablet. In fact, this one. This has become my device of choice because I commute and travel quite a bit. It has a pen, very powerful, and extremely easy to use. The right form factor, not too big, not too small. This is a Tab S4. If I want to go for a run, or I want to take a break, I have the watch on, which frankly is quite cool looking, very nice, and the right size and great battery life, and the earpods that I use. The workhorse is the Note 9. I'm a new user of Note 9, I must say, and I'm in love with it. It has a pen that I use all the time, and in fact, I stop carrying any other device or a notebook when I'm on a travel, when I'm traveling. In all of this, what you do not see is a PC. I don't use it anymore. Those little devices, and I'm not sure if it's clear or not, there's a phone, a desk phone, and a conference unit. I'm asking my team to throw those out because I don't use them anymore. They're not necessary. So my office is really run by these different products that I'm showing you here today. Very powerful. Two important features I like to call out that our customers are telling us are useful. First is DeX. We launched this last year and improved it. We actually launched it in 2017 with the S8 and improved it last year. I happened to learn what DeX is by accident. I walked into our DC office. There was no PC, took my phone, and plugged it into the DeX connector. The monitor came to life. All the applications that I wanted to run was right there. I had a mouse and a keyboard and began to use it. At the same time, I was using my phone to make phone calls and conference calls. So what happened is I had a PC and a phone, but without having a clunky PC sitting on my desktop. And the experience is actually quite good. DeX is not something that's futuristic. It's being used today. We have a number of customers in the retail sector and in banking that are already using this, and demand for this is quite high. The other feature I want to point out is the S Pen. It's quite modest. It's in the Note 9. It's rechargeable. But the whole way of usage and the way I use the pen and my sort of behavior at work has changed. We can now sign documents, draw, annotate, and of course control the phone with the S9. So in a business environment, this becomes the S Pen. In the business environment, this becomes very powerful. And again, something that our customers are beginning to use. We asked them, are these useful? And how can we deploy this in your work environment? And in fact, we asked a number of our leading industry partners to come to New York to work with us and to brainstorm. We held an advisory board meeting about a month ago from very large companies, most of these logos you recognize, CIOs, chief security officers, industrial designers, head of retail, head of engineering, and had a brainstorming session. And we collected data from what they said and the use cases. And we said, how do we use DeX, S Pen, and the other features that we have showed to them, but that we have shown them? And what they said to us is the following. Help us transfer our enterprise collaboration tools in a DeX environment. All of the conferencing solutions, video, unified communications has to be enabled within the new setting that I just described to you today. Work and productivity apps that they use needs to be also transferred into a DeX environment. And essentially, many of the back-end legacy systems that they use, CRM or ERP, needs to also be powered by DeX, so they save space and lower their TCO, the cost of operations, by removing the PCs and the clutter they have on their desktops. As I said to you, this is something that's already in use today by many of our customers. We asked them also, what's on your top of mind? Not surprisingly, they said digital transformation. When we asked them, what does that really mean? We sort of realized very quickly, most of these companies that I showed actually know exactly where they are and where they need to go. What they're asking us to do at Samsung is to become their partners. They want us to essentially transform their processes, their workflows, their workspace, and really become their advisors for industrial design. That's a really good opportunity for all of us to collaborate and to develop applications for the B2B environment. And we have taken these to heart, and we have learned quite a bit. These are examples of some of the deployments that we've had recently. We have data that shows that, in fact, deployments have been very successful. Magna is an auto parts company. Nautilus, you all know, has products for health and for exercising. Frontier is the airline. Alessandra is a top-notch hotel. And United Rentals rents heavy machinery. We've deployed our products. These are just a sample, and gathered data in terms of the effectiveness of the applications we've rolled out. So we have the devices, we have the platforms, and we're developing solutions for different verticals. And we're rolling it out in the industry. So what are we asking our developer communities to do? How can we partner together? We have created about 300 different use cases from our base and the customers we've spoken with. And I'll go through some of these specifically because they are immediate problems to address and immediate areas that we can focus on. First is health. The biggest problem in health today is that doctors are spending too much time managing paperwork and not spending time on their duties as a physician. So they've told us, use mobile platform to replace the outdated technology. In fact, there's a lot of push to do this. We can transform the points of care and patient monitoring. There's a lot of activity in that as well. Scanning and sending data via secure messaging is a big area of focus as well. And then pain management using VR and applications is also something they're spending time. This morning, we had a session on health, and a lot of the topics I've discussed with you were brought up. We have rolled out several different large deployments of applications using our devices, and some of them purpose-built. And this is an area of major focus and drive for us. So health. Next one is manufacturing. The problem in manufacturing is how do you keep your process and your workflows steady so that you don't lose money as a manufacturer, whether you're a large one or a small mom-and-pop shop. Now, some of you will be surprised, but majority of manufacturing companies still use the pen and paper to run their operations. So there's a lot of potential for transformation, a lot of room for growth in this segment as well. Specific areas of interest to them are maintenance and repair of their products, reducing paperwork, of course, organizing tasks and supply chain, and then streamlining all of the operations from the office to the shop floor. Now, one area that I think will benefit quite a bit from 5G is manufacturing. Many of these are campus-type environments or large factories where 5G and broadband deployment to the endpoint, to the products, would change how they actually redesign their factories and their floor space. This is an area of interest for all of us, and we're spending quite a bit of time in developing use cases. Next one is retail. The problem with retail is survival. What they really want to do is to get customers to close transactions and focus on creating a good customer experience. And here they're turning to us for help. Again, not surprisingly, in the retail segment, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of focus in order to survive. So we see a lot of expenditure on rethinking how the front end of a retail store is actually organized. How do you go to a store where you have to pick up and go, or go to a different environment where you sit down and shop? There's a lot of thinking and, again, processes around process reinnovation around retails. A few important problems, areas that we can address. First is what we call operations, tying the front end to the back end. Clienting and kiosks are a big area of focus for us. DeX, for example, could be very useful. So you walk into a bank, and instead of somebody sitting behind a desk with a PC and having a very impersonal relationship and interaction with you, you can now turn that device, the tab or the PC, and have somebody sign it, so that whole interaction becomes very different. Point of sales are now is something that's also going through transformation using our technology. And of course, scanning and management of tasks has become easier. Again, these are points, specific points and data that they've given us and requested that we solve for them. Finally, public safety. This is a vertical that's going through massive transformation. A lot of the technology in the field today is quite old. And solutions such as DeX help us to declutter the environment for a public safety officer. They need a lot of information on the go. They need it right at their fingertips. And what we have been able to do is provide access at exactly the right time when they need it. Specific problems, information on the go, and having access to the right information. Enhancing communications with dispatch. That's the application we rolled out, and it was publicized today. Leveraging wearables and coordinating emergency response with the first responders is a big area of public safety. So again, we have a number of different verticals. We have the right platforms. We have data and the customers right now in the US market, and about 300 different use cases that we can develop applications and take to market using our channels and using our partners. So how do we work together? B2B is a major focus for the company. What we are asking our partners to do, our developers, is to work with us, to partner with us, to collaborate with us. Develop applications around the use cases I described earlier. Migrate a lot of the applications in a work environment to DeX or leverage the S Pen. On our side, what we'll do is to provide development support to commercialize using our channels, using our own stores, and the ecosystem that we have built and that we will promote going forward. In many of these cases, we're ready and will fund proof of concept. So if there's an application specifically designed to solve a problem for a certain vertical or customer, we will roll it out and help commercialize it. So my call to action for you today is the following. Come talk to us. Many members of our team are here. We want to speak with you. If you're an independent application developer, We have the platform and framework to work together. If you're part of a company, we like to work with you to be able to replicate the success that you've had with us in one application to other. I thank you for your time, and nice to see you all. I think we have some time for Q&A. If you like to, we can have it. Otherwise, we have a booth outside. Mark, you may want to stand up. I think you're here. You're addressing the... So Mark Howden is part of our team. And if anybody has any questions about the application ecosystem and development work that we want to roll out, he'll be able to answer. Any questions?
Hi.
Any friendly questions?
Hello.
Go ahead. It's very hard to see here. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'll speak loud. I don't know if this is... My question was specifically to the example that you showed. I know it might have been abstract, the video of the bicycle and manufacturer, or any operations like that. I wanted to ask you your experience as Samsung or the specific partners and the brands that use this ecosystem. Can you talk to me a little bit about the challenges they had in retraining their staff to become comfortable using this technology? It was the bicycle example that really touched a chord, because I have clients that are bicycle shops and their staff are very, very brick and mortar, old school, not really up with the technology. So whether it was that example or that was just an ad or similar example, talk to me about the process that they go to get their staff used to this new technology.
Let me address it, and then maybe you want to jump in. So I'll tell you based on experience how these things work. I think if you change dramatically and the change is too large, I think adoption will be unsuccessful. So you have to go step by step. That's number one, in any technology. That's number one. And number two, the best way to adopt DeX, I mentioned it to you, I gave you the example. I actually happened to use it by accident. If somebody had described it to me, I wouldn't have understood what they're saying. So I walked into an office, there was no PC, I had to make a call and used, so I stuck it in this dock, and here DeX sort of came to life. So I think training is very important, all right? Number three is that when I kept using the term industrial redesign, industrial design, and workflow and work processes. Many of the customers that we see have gone through a tremendous have spent a tremendous amount of time and effort using their own internal resources or consultants to figure out how they streamline their workflows and processes. So they've thought through the deployment of these technologies in their companies. And so our job is to deploy the technology to make those possible. Okay? That's on one side. Right? But I want to add to it, so far clear. All right. But there's another thing that we are doing, and I'm glad you asked the question. B2B, go-to-market, is different in several key ways. The first challenge that we have, and we have to work with you to solve these and our partners, is that we have to train our channels to sell these solutions. So I have to describe these to you, what they mean, and package it so you can go sell these. The second element of what we're doing in terms of go-to-market is to have a program to onboard. So once we've sold the product, that's great. How does an enterprise begin to use these? What's the processes to plug them in, whether it's Knox or any application that's developed by a third party or our own stuff? So we're spending a lot of time in terms of coming up with solutions, with applications that lets an enterprise to plug in and use these applications seamlessly. The last part of it, so 3 steps, the last part that's very important in our go-to-market is the concept of support. When you get stuck, what do you do? How do you actually get familiarized with new features at work as an end user? How do you sort of get the next version of the product? So we look at this entire how to sell, how to onboard, and how to support and upsell as a process overall for the enterprise. It's very different than the consumer side because it's more complex, and we want to deploy this methodology outside with our partners to make sure they're successful. The larger the enterprise, the more important this becomes. If do you have any specific?
Yeah, no, those are great points. That's a great way of putting it. I think my team in general, if you can hear me, The number one thing that we do is walk into the customer and work with them and understand the user stories around how the users are actually functioning today. Not using their devices, not using, how do they actually function in their job today? And then with the expertise that we have in everything that Taher was talking about around DeX, around Knox, around all the customization that we can do with wearables and things like that, look at ways that we can integrate it into a way that makes their lives simpler. Because if the users don't adopt it, it's a failure. It's a waste of money, so.
Yes, go ahead.
So you described 5G as being a very transformative technology. Could you expound a little bit on that? I mean, the speed increases are obviously one thing, but beyond that, what exactly is?
The 5G lets you do a few things. I think you know most of the sort of the implications. One is no delay. No, basically, there's absolutely sort of real time. Massive pipeline at no delay. Being able to transfer a lot of content to the device when needed. So you can have a lot of content at the edge. Applications such as robotics, such as precision machinery, I think become possible now in the workspace, whereas it wasn't before. Real-time applications such as video and video transmissions from different sensors and different cameras become a possibility. Now, truth be told, these are some of the ideas and sort of imaginations that we ourselves are deploying on behalf of our customers. What we're really asking is that we have to come together to figure this out. 5G is one of those technologies that, because it's such a game changer in terms of I think we initially will probably do what we're doing better or faster, but I think the next phase and the real impact will come when we really change the entire process end to end, in terms of, especially in segments like manufacturing. So my call to action to you is, let's think through it. There's a lot of demand for that, because a lot of the applications you saw this morning in the keynote, or what I described here today, and would be happy to share some of these data with you, have to really be rethought using 5G. Please.
Thank you. You had a list of partners earlier on in the presentation, and for a lot of them, how you might be partnering with them is obvious. But I saw Microsoft and Google on there. I was wondering if you're able to talk about how specifically you might be working with them, since the possibilities there are a lot more diverse than some of the others that were up.
Sure. So look, I think to answer that, let me describe how we segment the market in terms of our approach, right? On the one hand, we have the large enterprises, the larger enterprises belonging to a specific vertical that have unique needs. They use, let's say, cloud. They use AI. They use machine learning provided by one of our partners. In fact, we have a number of cases where we are going to large retailers, and we're redesigning the entire way that their service agents, or the associates they call them, are interacting with customers, using our tablets, software that we co-develop, and the cloud and AI that's being used. Okay? And that's how we use Microsoft, Google, and others. So that's one area. In terms of the other side of Microsoft and Google, they have a number of apps which I call horizontal. For example, G Suites. Small businesses predominantly use G Suites. And what we do in these cases is we bundle them with our devices. And we sell these through our service providers, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and others. And what the idea is that if you're an enterprise or small business user, you get better value from data, devices, and a bundle at lower cost. Okay? So that's how we leverage them. The list I provided here was really a small sample, but you can recognize them. What we have not done so far, and we will do that, we have a number of different developers and partners that have come up with specialized solutions that are very effective. What we want to do is take these solutions, repackage them, either put them on a marketplace or create an ecosystem of partners that we can replicate across different industries. Is that clear? So we do certain things really well. I mean, think of it as stack, the entire application. We have hardware, certain elements of software, security for sure. They have the cloud, they have AI. We will have some elements of AI as well going forward for a workspace. And that's how we go to market. Yes.
Enterprises tend to be incredibly security conscious, risk averse animals, particularly when it comes to the reputation of Android. And Google's done a lot to try to mitigate some of those things with the Android Enterprise Recommended program. Can you tell me a little bit about Samsung's relation to that program, possibly why it's not part of it, whether this creates some uncertainty in the market? Then I have a follow-up question after that.
So we have some of our security experts in the room today. I can call on them to discuss this. But let me tell you the positioning that we have. Our security go-to-market is Knox. Okay, it is a product which you probably know, integrates very well with EMM software packages out there. And what we have done, and there's more to come, we basically secure the processor in a very unique manner and the applications that run on it. Our idea is to not only secure the apps and the hardware, but also make it easy to manage, these two elements. Our philosophy is to coexist. We do not want to restrict the enterprise from using one or the other. What we do want to offer is a more secure environment that they can access. And that is how we are taking it to the marketplace. Coexistence right now and partnership is a way to go for us. And I think most of our approach is in line with what we see with our partners. I believe in some areas we are distinctly different and perhaps more secure, but that's a message that we have to carry to the marketplace and position ourselves. Take some work to sort of convey that.
From a follow-up standpoint, you talked a lot about these digital transformation processes are incredibly time-intensive and painful for some companies to go through. So I'm curious, you mentioned earlier wanting to work with like independent app developers on building enterprise applications. Obviously, they can't get deployed in a bubble because there's a whole deployment side of that in terms of the device management side, which is critical. But I'm kind of curious in terms of when you're helping customers, large enterprises, work on some of these digital transformation projects. What are you seeing in the marketplace right now in terms of are most of these sort of homegrown, working with their internal development teams, working in-house and maybe in partnership with Samsung? How do you see that in relationship to being able to work with sort of the independent app developers on developing enterprise-grade applications and then having those aid in sort of these digital transformation processes and also then be able to be deployed?
Yeah, thanks. So look, companies that focus on digital transformation, and frankly that term is a bit of a cliche nowadays because everybody's transforming in some fashion or form. That's a term that's been used now for a while and perhaps overused. But what we have seen, some of the logos I put up there, these companies go and spend a lot of time and effort and money, both using internal resources and external resources, in terms of really redesigning their environment. Whether in retail, healthcare, manufacturing, or banking, many of those, again, names are quite well known, or airlines. And they have they design and they come up with a blueprint. And then what they do, they typically bring us in as the experts, because they want the experts that understand devices and mobility. They don't want to go to a commodity system integration shop. We ask them, why don't you? Because they don't trust them. So they bring us in as the mobility experts to integrate the devices together and bring the app developers as partners that can sort of deploy the applications on top of it. Sometimes they bring, and in fact, specialized system integration shops that understand certain specific problems, and we tend to work with them. One of the things that we want to do is come up with a methodology or a process that we can streamline this as well. So the answer to your question is we become part of the ecosystem. Our developers become one of our partners. But the mobility expert, the people that actually focus on how is it done from a mobile-centric point of view, is typically us. And we have the team and the resource to dedicate to it. In fact, we have the way we're organized internally. I should just describe this to you. Samsung B2B is a different business unit. The way we are organized is we have teams that are targeting only what I would call Fortune 500. Then we have other teams that go after the mid-sized enterprises. And then the SMB segment is essentially addressed through the carrier channel. So we have specific teams focused on these verticals. Any other questions? Well, thank you. Good to see you all, and hope we have follow-up discussions.